before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to tell you a little bit when I retired from Olympic sport. So 2008, after the Beijing Olympics, obviously won the silver medal in the Olympics before, 2004. Retired after 2008, came fifth. I was 31 years old, and I thought, that's it, I've had enough of sport. So I wanted to see what else I had, what else I could do in my life. At 31 years old, I had a CV of, well, basically nothing. I looked at my CV and it said, I can hit a shuttle over a net. Brilliant. We know first I can do it quite well. I was world number one, world champion, but it's not really when you go into a business to say, what are your skills? I go, well, I'd beat you all at badminton. Brilliant. So that is why it's kind of important to start thinking about, what else is there? Who else can you do? Who else you are other than being just an athlete? Because we all have skills, and as much as the transferable skills you have as athletes, great, you can perform under pressure, the mentality of it, but it's also transferring that into business. So whether you're like budding entrepreneurs or whatever you go on to decide to do after sport, there is something there for everyone. But you do need a bit of help, and that is why we've got our second speaker here today. So we've got Mohammed Kasujee, hopefully I said that right. So Mohammed helps athletes with their transition, basically, their career choices for their CVs, but also the coaching and mentoring as well. So without further ado, can you put your hands together for Mohammed?
Thank you very much, Gail, for the warm welcome. I want to start by taking everyone back to where you guys first started, and for some of you guys who are very young, it might be just a few months ago or just a few years ago. Once upon a time, you had a dream to make it in professional sport. You set yourself a challenging goal, one that most people wouldn't be able to make. But despite that, you put the work in and things started to happen. You backed yourself and you banked on your ability to win. And before you know it, you're playing and on the road to professional sport. You start to get the recognition that you always wanted. You've got a sense of identity and purpose. You might even start making some good money. And before long, you start to feel a sense of success. But after a while, things start to change. Maybe you lose momentum. Maybe you stop working as hard as you once did. Or maybe you start to get injuries that curtail your progress. Then life starts to look very, very different. Maybe not only it's you that doubts yourself, but the doubts of people close to you, your friends and your family, that starts to ring louder and louder in your head. Now you're playing a very different game to the one you once did. Now you're not playing to win, but you're playing not to lose. Then things start to falter even more. Things don't feel as fun as they once used to. You're not as happy, and deep down you know that what you're doing just isn't it. You just don't know what's next. For some of you guys, you might have already experienced this feeling, and for others, it might be something that comes further down the line. The good news is, it doesn't have to be anything that's daunting or scary. There is a way forward, and over the course of this talk, I'll be able to tell you how you can create a career for yourself after professional sport finishes. But before we go into that, let me tell you a bit more about me and my story so you can understand where I've come from. So my name is Mohammed, and I come from a conservative Asian background. So I'm a third generation Asian, so my grandparents migrated from India to England in the 1960s. And when I was growing up, many ethnic minorities would agree, like your life is almost laid out for you. You go to school and you can't come back with anything but the best grades. Then you've got to go to uni and nothing less than a first class degree is good. And then you've got to go on and get a respectable career path. And that's not the end, that's just the beginning, because then it's all about settling down. It's about getting married, having children, paying off a mortgage. Everything's about security and stability so you can help your children do the same thing. And that's exactly what I did, because I went to uni, I graduated with a first, and here's me on my graduation day with my dad looking happy. And I was really happy because everything expected of me, I was done. I had a sense of identity that came with having a job that everyone wanted. I had a first-class degree, I had identity. And as I continued into medical sales, which is what I started doing afterwards, that recognition and that identity got stronger and stronger. But deep down, after a while, I never really felt fulfilled. I wanted more than what I currently had. I just didn't know what it was. But the problem was that I felt guilty because everything that I'd worked so hard to achieve was on the line. My parents, my friends, my family, everyone was happy with what I was doing. What if I moved into something new and I failed? What if it didn't go as well as I thought it would? What would happen then? Over the course of this time, I was eventually able to transition into a brand new career path. And over the course of this talk, we can talk about how that could happen too. So I get to a point now where I need to know what to do next. And eventually, over the course of time, I was able to do that. And as a career coach, I now help other athletes transition into new careers. I've helped over 110 clients to date, and this is the method that I've used. And over the course of this talk, I'm going to lay out the steps that now or in the future you can use to transition into a new career path. Number one, it's about defining your passion. Number two, it's about identifying unique talents that are specific to you. Number three is about creating a support network to help you make the leap. 4 is about taking action and having something to show for your efforts. And 5 is about turning pro. The same way you guys have aspirations of turning pro at some point, you can take this and transition into a brand new career too. So let's start with number 1, passion. What does it actually mean to be passionate? The good news is for you guys, you've probably experienced that already. Something that you're driven to do, something that never feels like work, something that you can talk about endlessly to your friends, your family, everyone else. It is possible to be passionate about more than one thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be reserved for sport. You can be passionate about other things too. Because the reality is, if you're making a change, it has to come from an internal place. If you don't love what you do, you're never going to be able to make a success of it. It has to be something that you're driven to do even when no one else wants to do, putting in the work, putting in the hours. Because the reality of doing something that you're not passionate about is something completely different. Once upon a time, I was in a job that I didn't like. I used to work in an office, and I spent most of my time looking like that, my head on a desk thinking, what am I doing here? My life had no meaning. I was using skills that didn't really align to me. I was in an industry that I didn't want to work in. Is there anything worse than being in a position like that? I literally felt like I was dying, like a slow and painful death. You want to do something you're passionate about so that you're excited to get up in the morning and actually make a difference. These are some of the symptoms of a passionless life, and perhaps some of you have experienced this already. Being in a job where you're not motivated, the work doesn't feel worth it. Maybe everyone around you is really excited and doing something, and you're there thinking, what am I doing here? And there's no excitement and control in your work. So the first place to start is something that truly lights you up and gets you going. And a great example of this is this guy. Anyone heard of this guy, Ross Edgley? This guy is one of the most amazing people I've ever heard of, really. Endurance sport guy, swimmer. One of the best things that he did, amongst others, he actually swam around all of Great Britain, and he never stepped foot on land the whole time. How crazy is that? This is what happened along the way. 37 jellyfish stings. There was one point that he talks about in a podcast where there was a jellyfish stuck to his face for half an hour. Imagine that. 1,792 miles covered. If you were to drive from London to Russia, that's the distance that it would be. 157 days in the sea, never stepped foot on land once in that time. 610 bananas eaten. I'd be sick after about 10, but he ate 610. 15,000 calories per day. Can you imagine that? And 3 kilograms of Vaseline used. That's insane. Would any of you guys do the same? I mean, unless you guys love swimming, probably the answer is going to be no. I definitely wouldn't do. I'd probably give up after day 1 or day 2. But this guy loved what he did. He was so passionate about endurance sport and swimming that he actually went out there and he broke all these records. So the question to you is, how can you lead a life that's full of passion? Something where work doesn't feel like work. Something where you feel excited to get up every morning and where you're willing to put in the hours. And most importantly, making it not about the money, but actually something you care about, because the money gets old very, very quickly. How can you find that for yourself, you might be asking? Because let's make it a bit more practical now, so that you guys can actually put some tips for yourself. Number 1, what would you love to do? It's a simple question, but not many people actually ask that. What industries would you love to work in? Are there any hobbies that you have other than sport that you can actually tap into? Who's other people in your circle that inspire you? Maybe if you start to think about these things, you can actually find a career for yourself that actually aligns with your long-term goals and interests. And here are some examples of interests that you can go into. When I talk about industries, what does that mean? It could be like finance or investing. It could be healthcare. It could be food. It could be design. It could be sport. It could be automotive. There's so many industries that you can go into. the first thing that you want to do is to pick a lane that you want to go into, an area of interest, and then we can talk about how you can make a transition happen in that space. And the biggest question I can ask to help you make this, if it wasn't clear enough, was, if failure wasn't an option, what would you commit to doing? Most of us are scared of failing. Most of us are scared that if we try something new, we won't be very good and we'll lose our identity and sense of purpose. But what happens if you tap into that? Maybe you can make something work that you perhaps didn't even think was possible. At this stage, you just want to entertain some possibilities and give some ideas a go. You never know where it could lead you. So we got to a point now maybe where you can think of some unique talents or passions of yours. Now what can you do in that space? If we pick something like finance, for example, it's such a broad area. If you love investing, you could be in HR, you could be working in an office, you could be the one crunching the numbers. What do you actually want to do once you've found an area that you're interested in? The second thing to do is to actually identify something unique about you that you could use to actually move into that space. And I'll take you back to myself. Like when I was at school, I was your typical nerd. I was a geek. I loved getting my work done just so I could go around the room and help everyone else. And then later on, when I was in high school, as a younger kid, I was helping all the sixth form students fill out their uni applications, and I was doing it for free. And then when I went to uni, people were coming to me and I was writing their CVs for them. That was something that came naturally to me and never ever felt like work. What is it that you connect to when you look back? Other than sport, is there any other areas that you feel like maybe have been lost along the way? Maybe it's something that makes you come alive. Maybe it's something that when you're not in the athlete space, you're perhaps thinking of doing. Or maybe it comes effortlessly to yourself. And more importantly, how many of those things are actually part of your life right now? It's quite important that when you're in sport, you're very passionate and you're very laser focused. But maybe you lose sight of other things that really interest you. Maybe there's other things that you're good at, you just haven't had the chance to explore yet. If you actually tap into these things, you never know what could uncover from that. Here's some examples of skills that I'm talking about. You could be someone who loves motivating others. People get really engaged and hyped once they speak with you. You could be someone who's natural at solving problems. You're always thinking outside the box and coming up with new ideas. You might be someone who likes making things. You might be a practical person. Or it might be about speaking or writing. These are just some examples of skills, and the first step is to think about which ones align to you. There might be more that I haven't even mentioned on this list. Here's a picture of me in my old job in medical sales. Now, when you think of a sales job, you probably think of someone who's got a briefcase and a suit like this, selling and doing deals. But I was actually going into hospitals, convincing surgeons to let me watch them operate on athletes. And athletes were having ACL injuries, meniscus tears, rotator cuff repairs. I was actually watching them do the surgeries and then spending time with them, and then watching them and helping them find a better way for them to do surgery using the products that my company sold. Now, as it probably sounds, it sounded like quite a cool job, and my friends and my family and everyone loved what I did. It was quite an interesting thing to talk about, and I was getting paid quite well, and I felt a strong sense of purpose and identity, and I felt successful. But after a while, things stopped feeling as fulfilling as they once did. I didn't feel as engaged anymore, and when I stopped to actually think about why that was, I realized that thing when I was younger about helping people was missing. I really missed helping people do stuff with their careers. I really missed helping people make an impact and change their lives. Once I'd got the money that I wanted, I realized that no more amount of money than I was making was going to make me any happier. And once I realized that was the case, I knew I had to do something I really loved, and it couldn't be about the money, and it couldn't even be about what people thought. And so I did some time to think about it, and I thought, what if I combine the skill that I have for selling, because I was quite good at selling, and what if I took the love for careers and personal development, and what if I combined that and turned it into a career coaching business? It sounds really obvious now that I say it, but it actually took quite a lot of effort to come to this conclusion. I had to sit down and I had to write down all the skills that I was good at, all the areas that I wanted to work in, and I messed around with them until I came up with this conclusion. But who's to say you can't do the same? Who's to say you can't create a new career using the skills and the areas that you want to work in? And see, these are some of the questions that you can ask in order to identify some of those skills. What comes effortlessly to you that others might struggle with? What have you often been praised for doing by your managers, your colleagues, your family, your friends? What jobs would you do for free if you really had to? If it wasn't sport, what would it be? And what activities make you lose track of time? Maybe things that you can spend hours and hours doing and you don't even know what the time is afterwards. This is a great place to identify some of the skills that might be of interest to you. And once you've done that, you can start to play and mess around with different ideas. So some of the clients that I've helped who have been athletes, one of them, he absolutely loved cooking. That was his thing. And his big field of interest was nutrition. So he combined those things together and he started a YouTube channel about cooking. One of my other colleagues, he really wanted to get into sales, and he had a sporting background. So like me, he started working in that space of helping surgeons fix sporting injuries and became a medical rep. Others that you can do, one of my clients absolutely loved helping people and he absolutely loved psychology. So he combined that together and became a counselor, because when he was young and he went through some trauma, a counselor really helped him. The point is that there's many, many careers that you can follow and there's many options that you can mess around with. Feel free to give yourself permission not to fail and try something new. You never ever know what could come out of the other side. Number 3, maybe you've got to a point now where you've got an idea that you really like, an industry that you want to work in, and you know what skills you want to use. What comes next after this? You might be tempted at this stage, if you think of a great idea, to just jump in and start thinking about that and leave everything behind. But it doesn't have to be that way. The best thing that you can do at this stage is to create a support network for yourself. Speak to people who have already done what you wanted to do, and maybe you'll get some ideas for yourself, really. One example of that was myself, for example, and I call it shiny object syndrome, where I'm jumping from idea to idea until I finalize something. There was one point in time where, like yourselves, I wanted to be a footballer. I used to love playing football, eating football, sleeping football, breathing football. It was football every single day. And as I started playing more football, Sunday league, school football, I thought, maybe I could do this. But then as I started talking to my friends who are actually in the academy system, and some of them who are pros, I realized that it wasn't for me. I wasn't willing to put in the work in terms of the exercise. I wasn't willing to make sacrifices with my diet, as you can probably tell. And I definitely wasn't willing to put in the hours in terms of the training and the scheduling. It just wasn't for me. The idea of being a footballer was stronger to me than the reality of being a footballer. And that can be the same when you're making a career change. The idea of something can be quite different from how it actually is. So the best thing that you can do is actually speak to people and see for yourself what it actually entails. The platforms I've used to do this are social media, because there's plenty of them. If you found a business or a career idea that you really love, use platforms like this to actually search for people who are doing what you want to do and speak to them. I use LinkedIn a lot because you can actually search for job titles or business titles that people have and actually reach out. And over time, people will give you the time of day, and you can actually find mentors who have done what you want to do and tell you the exact steps that you can follow. And if you're more of a people person, you can go to conferences like these. You can go to festivals, expos, trade shows. There's so many platforms out there to find people who are doing what you're doing and speak to them, because over time, you will be able to find the answers to help you get where you want to be. It's always good to do this because you have to learn about what it is like before you do it, because the reality is very different. And when you're making a career change, it's not just your work that's impacted. It's your life, the people you spend time with, the amount of money you earn, the person that you become. All of these things will change with a career, and it's really important to go in with an open mind. Get a feel for what your new life will be like before you actually take the leap for yourself. Number 4, creating a track record. We've got to a point where maybe you know what you want to do and you've spoken to people and you're still validated. What's next? Actually creating a track record and speaking to and taking some action on what needs to work. Me, for example, when I knew I wanted to be a career coach, I had no idea what the reality of it would be like. I just liked the idea. So what I did was I started going on LinkedIn and speaking to people who are actually career coaches and learning from them. There was literally one time where one person who was already a career coach, she gave me an hour and a half of her time just telling me about career coaching. And by the end of it, she was trying to convince me not to do it. She was like, don't take this risk. What you're doing is so good. But I spoke to about 20 other people, and what career coaching actually entails still felt right for me. I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to do things on my own terms. And I knew what it would take to be successful. And what I did was I put in the work to make it happen. Thinking about being a coach or starting a business was great, but actually taking action was the next step. So I went back to what I was doing at uni. Whilst I was still working in medical sales, I started writing CVs for people, reaching out to friends and family, and getting my word out there. And slowly they started getting results. And alongside my job, my clients were getting new jobs, and some of them wanted help getting promotions. Others realized that what they were doing isn't what they always wanted to do, and they wanted my help in finding a new career path. And on the back of that, I started coaching. And one client after another, my coaching business grew, and I actually started to get some reviews. And I thought, if I'm doing all this work, I might as well have something to show for it. So I set up a business and I set up some business pages and actually started leaving reviews, getting my clients to leave reviews. And over time, my reputation grew, and so did the idea that I could do this full time. And eventually, as I got my confidence up and I started to do more work, I thought this could be for me, and I transitioned out of my medical sales career into a full-time career coaching business. So if you get to this point in your life now where you know what you want to do, you've validated your ideas and you're ready to take action, start doing something. If writing is something that you're really good at, start some blog posts, write some articles. If you're more of a speaker, start a YouTube channel, start making short form content, or start a podcast. If you're a practical person, start making things and documenting your progress along the way. You can show your work, and at the very least, you're going to learn some new skills. You're going to gain some experience in doing something new, and you're going to learn what it's like to be doing something full-time by doing it part-time first. This isn't about quitting your job one day and starting another job or a new business the next. It's about a slow process so you can test some ideas and see if it really works for you. Over time, you will get the confidence that you can try something and you will have something to show for it. And number 5 now, this is the next stage, and this is probably the most exciting one. If you've made it this far in the process, you're at the cusp now of doing something amazing, and it's entirely up to you as where you take this journey. Maybe now you can visualize yourself, maybe it's 6 weeks from now, maybe it's 6 months from now, or maybe it's 6 years from now. You're at a point where you're seamlessly transitioning from one career to the next. You've done all the work to know what industry you want to work in. You've done the work to identify what your key skills are and how they're going to align. You've got some mentors and a support network who can align with what your career path will be. And you've already started taking action, so you know what it's like to do this new career or this new business that you want. Where do you want to take it from here? Well, the reality is you can take it wherever you want it to be. You can either work in something that gives you more security, like a job, or take an internship, or something that gives you more freedom, like a business. Or there's something in between. It's entirely up to you as where you want to take it. There's no necessity to quit what you're doing in sport and go into a job. And there's no necessity to go into a business and sit at home with sipping cocktails on the beach while your money works for you in your sleep. It can take it wherever you want it to. The choice truly is yours. Becoming a professional is a journey that can be seamless. It doesn't have to be a sudden change, because I know that can be very daunting for a lot of people. I'm going to finish this because I know we're conscious of time. I'm going to talk about an analogy which I use. And when I think about a career change, I think about a snake. And when I say snake, I don't mean Spurs fans. I mean the animal. I'm an Arsenal fan, if you don't know already. A snake, from time to time, goes through a period of change. It has to shed its skin because it outgrows the skin that it's currently in. And it's not a seamless process. It can be quite uncomfortable. If the snake doesn't go through the process, it goes like a funny blue color and it eventually ends up dying. But if it does shed its skin, it comes out as a new person, a new snake that's stronger and more resilient. It's not too different from making a career change. You have to shed your old identity. You have to let go of who you are and become a new person. And it can be an uncomfortable process. But I can assure you that if you go through the process, you will become a newer, a stronger, a more resilient person. Deep down, you won't lose any of the things that made you successful or got you to where you are today. You will still have the drive. You will still have the focus. You will still have the dedication. All you're doing is applying it to a new direction. The first step really to embrace that is to let go of the possibility of this being your permanent identity and thinking about how you can evolve into a new person. Change can be hard, but it can definitely lead you to a place where you'll be more fulfilled, more happy, and more successful than you've ever been. As I conclude this talk, I want to talk about a quote from a great coach called Steve Chandler, and this is what he has to say. On your deathbed, you will not wish that you had been more comfortable or that you had found an easier, softer pleasure zone to hide out in. You will wish that you had ventured out more, that you had spoken up more, tried some things, reinvented yourself one more time. Thank you very much for your time today. If you want to get in touch with me and reach out, I'm here for the rest of the day. I'd love to talk to you about career changes. Thank you.